Well, what a crazy couple of weeks it has been in the bond market, y'all. Interest rates have moved massively over the last 2.5 weeks or so, and we're going to talk about it on today's video. So let's get right into it. This morning, we waited until Friday again because we had strong economic data last week, the personal consumption expenditures report, which is the Fed's favorite gauge of inflation. And then 1 week later, we got non-farm payroll reflected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the jobs report that comes out on the first Friday of each month. This one has actually been more impactful for the Fed because weakness in the job market, or perceived weakness in the job market, is what prompted a half-point cut when the Fed met on Wednesday 2 weeks ago. So that movement, y'all, that we saw from the Fed was very much tied to jobs. So all eyes are on these BLS jobs reports on the first Friday of each month. And this morning's was a huge blockbuster, y'all. 140,000 new jobs were expected with an unemployment rate of 4.2%. We got 254,000 new jobs with the unemployment rate unexpectedly ticking down to 4.1%. This was a much stronger than expected jobs report, y'all. This is going to immediately impact the upcoming Fed meeting with the notion that a half-point cut at that meeting is likely off the table in favor of potentially 2 quarter-point cuts if we get a cut at all. We're going to start seeing the bond market pricing into the notion that the Fed may either pause or move more slowly at their future meetings, and you're going to see that reflected in the bond market trading. And diving right into interest rates, y'all, here's what it looks like. On Fed Day, we were sitting in the national average, according to Mortgage News Daily, going into the Fed meeting, we were at 6.11% nationally on a 30-year fixed rate loan. A week later, we were at 6.2. So we went up an eighth after the Fed met, because again, the Fed really couldn't do anything other than disappoint us at that meeting. They met expectations. The market had priced in, frankly, more than a half-point expectation for that meeting. And so they got what they got, and all that left was a little disappointment in the bond rally, in the bond market rather, and you saw that reflected with higher rates. We strongly urged folks to lock their interest rate going into that Fed meeting and to not wait. That was very sound advice because we saw interest rates immediately higher. This morning, we are at 6.53 on a 30-year fixed rate loan, y'all. We are up 3/8 of a point, almost half a point in 2.5 weeks. That is a lot of movement upward in interest rates, y'all. It essentially erases any notion that the Fed was going to help us with just that first rate cut. And it is really putting ripples through the market. There's a lot of folks that no doubt were looking for opportunities to refinance. They're probably going to be watching the market for a while to see some recovery. Now, do I think that 6.53 is going to be with us for long? I really don't. I think that we're going to see the Fed continue on a pathway towards easing where they currently sit. That said, the pace at which they do that is now in question. Y'all, when we look at other news that hit the wires this week, you know, we had the Longshoreman strike. This is the largest union in the United States, and they are responsible for offloading all of our overseas shipments at our ports of call around the country. This strike specifically impacted the East Coast and the Gulf ports, and that is a lot. When you're talking about all of the imported stuffs that supply the Northeast in particular being cut off, is hugely inflationary. It's very problematic for the supply chain to have these strikes affect our ability to get those imports on store shelves. So you saw massive lines at Costco this week as an example. Walmart, they're all selling out of water and toilet paper and paper towels and things that everyone is panicked won't be available. Well, y'all, when you have that much spending in such a short period of time, it's inflationary. It creates scarcity for those commodities and it pushes prices higher. If you remember back in 2020, we had the massive perfect storm to create an inflationary storm that brought us the highest prices in 50 years and the fastest increase in prices. You had massive quantitative easing by the Fed driving interest rates into the 2s on 30-year fixed rate mortgages to combat the downturn in economic activity related to the COVID shutdowns. You had massive spending at the governmental level directly to businesses, directly to individuals, COVID relief funds, the PPE loans that were flooding the marketplace back then. So you had a massive amount of cash all of which, or the majority of which, is having to be borrowed, which flooded the market with debt instruments, which in itself pushes interest rates higher as those prices fall and yields rise in relationship to those increased debt loads. And you also had a longshoreman strike that lasted several months back in 2020 that just zapped the supply chains across the country, made it almost impossible to get goods on the shelves, all of those imported items that we rely on. You had that perfect storm. So when the longshoreman strike settled yesterday, or at least was delayed until January after the election, I think a bit of political influence being exerted there on behalf of the incumbency folks. So if I can be allowed that political commentary, we got interest rates that are a quarter higher in a day, even with that strike being settled. It was a huge component that started the inflationary fire back in 2020. It got resolved last night, and still, on the strength of this non-farm payroll report, we're up nearly a quarter in rate in a day. So y'all, that's how much news can impact what you pay for a house and what you pay for a mortgage. It hopefully is a good service for your borrowers that they're aware of it. This reinforces the notion that I've stated several times on these videos. I do not float rates in these kinds of environments. When a contract comes in, we're locking that day, y'all. I'm very, very committed to that notion because the upside risk far outweighs downside benefit in the current environment. When that changes, we advise borrowers of that, and we say, hey, next week might be a better time to lock based on what's happening in the bond market. Right now is not that time. So in any event, hope this is helpful for you and for your clients. All of my information is on the screen. Be blessed, stay safe. We will talk to you next week.